Hey there guys, how the fuck are we? Hope we're all doing super tasty as usual. Welcome back to my channel where we'll be doing something a bit different to usual, which is what I say in the start of every video. This time's actually a bit different. I'm actually finishing games today, which is like mind-blowing for me. So today we're looking at Soma, which I bought back when the game first came out. 2015 maybe? 2013? 2013, we'll go with that. But yeah, it's been sitting in my library for ages. I've always loved frictional game stuff, like Amnesia, Penumbra. I've loved all of those games, except for Machine for Pigs. That's another one I need to do. Enough about their past games. I've always had this on my library on Steam and I've just never gotten around to playing it. So I thought, you know what, fuck that, I'm doing it. A couple of my mates have been telling me to play it. So I was like, I'm gonna bite the bullet. And you know what will make it even more fun to play? I'll make a video on it. So here we are, let's fucking get into it. So right off the bat, I just want to clarify what this video is meant to be. It's not meant to be some sort of story synopsis because there's plenty of those around and they're all done better than I possibly could. So this is basically just my experience with the game, what I liked, what I didn't like, basically a review. So let's fucking get started. I also just want to say at the start, if you are like me and this game's been on your backlog for a while and you haven't played it, definitely go play it first, then come back and watch this video. It's better to go in semi-blind. I knew a little bit about this game starting off, but it was definitely good going in not knowing sort of everything and what to expect. So go check it out first if you haven't played it already. So now that part's out of the way, I just want to get started on some pros with Soma. So probably the biggest one for me is the story. The story is so fucking good. And I know I said I wasn't going to do any spoilers because some things in this game you just need to experience for yourself. So we won't go into that story too much. I just wanted to make note of just how good the story is. There is one plot line, however, that does take you out of it a little bit and feels sort of shoehorned in. If you've played this game before, you'll know what I'm talking about and we'll get into that a little bit later. But anyway, the story is fucking amazing. That's all you need to know there. Also worth noting is just how great the atmosphere in this game is. I don't know if you can particularly tell from the stuff on the screen at the moment, but it is creepy as all fuck. And anyone who's ever played a frictional game before knows they are the fucking masterclass in creepy settings. A lot of which you can also thank the soundtrack for. I've got the soundtrack here playing in the background, and all I can say in regards to the soundtrack, fucking phenomenal. Just perfect. It hits the beats when it needs to, cranks up the emotion when it needs to, and also backs off when it needs to. I never found it took me out of the experience, and I feel like, especially when it comes to a survival horror game, that's what you want in a soundtrack. Not something that's going to take all your attention away from the game, but also be such an integral part to the experience that it can't go without it. Now this next part, some may consider minor spoilers, but I feel like if you've played any of Frictional Games' back catalogue, you'll be expecting this part, but anyway, I'll put a spoiler warning. And also anything from here on out, sort of hard to explain without spoilers, so from here on out, spoiler territory. Sticking with the positives, I want to mention the monster design. I feel like overall, the monster design in this game is really, really good. There are a few that are a bit weird, I want to say, but there are some also really, really interesting, not only designs for the monsters, but also the ways you get around them, because being a frictional game, you can't actually fight them head on. It's always working around them and trying to, I guess, coexist. There are a few monsters I would like to mention in particular just because I really like the design of them. And I actually jumped onto the Soma wiki to get the names for these monsters because I don't think, besides a few, I don't think there's really mention of the actual names of them in the game. First I want to mention the Flesher, which is a naked human in appearance with like a big fungal looking growth on its head. Not only is the design, I think, really cool, also the way you have to navigate around it and not look at it. Like, a lot of the enemies in this game is emphasized not to look at them, but this one in particular, as soon as you even get a glimpse of it through like a crack in a doorway, your vision is just fucked. Next up is Robot Head, which I'm definitely taking points away for the naming, if that's actually the official name, but anyway. I do really like the design of Robot Head as well. I like the taken over structure gel look with the crab pincer on one of the hands. I think that's a really cool design. But I think the thing I like the most about Robot Head overall is the way you have to traverse around her. So you can't move too quickly around Robot Head, otherwise they'll sort of spot you. There's not a whole lot of use of robot head in the game. I think you only see it maybe twice through the whole runtime. But there's one scene which I'm playing right now in particular where you have to get uncomfortably close to robot head and sort of creep towards your goal and creep back. And it is really, really nerve-wracking. And last but most certainly not least is the anglefish, which probably has to go down as the least imaginative name, but on the other hand is also, I think, the coolest concept and design of the three that I've mentioned. I think one of the reasons I like this enemy so much is because the whole point of it is to lure enemies with its light. When I experienced this in the game, it baited me so fucking hard and did exactly what it was designed to do, as you'll see on the screen now. Now, I also just want to jump across and critique one of the monsters I didn't like so much, and I guess also the monster plotline as a whole and where it lacks. So through the whole game, there was only really one enemy I found particularly annoying, which is Mr. Akers, or Mr. Akers, depending on how you pronounce it. I'm fucking horrible with names, so I've probably mispronounced that. Now, it's not his design I don't like. I think the design of him is really cool. It's the whole section he's in at first. I just found it really annoying, and there was one part I particularly didn't like where you can actually lock him in a room, but the part I don't like about that is after time he actually finds his way out of that room. And also I think part of what takes out the whole tension of his section of the game is you can actually lock yourself in a room and he can't get in, so you can sort of just sit in there and I guess watch him and wait and get his cycle and all that sort of stuff. And while I'm on the sort of negatives, I want to also talk about just the whole monster plotline altogether. So a lot of the monster sections sort of pulled me out of the story that the game felt like it was trying to tell. It sort of was the least fitting part of the whole game, was certain monster interactions. Now, some of them were really cool, just for the cool factor, but some of them didn't feel like they sort of fit with the whole story. Like, I get the WoW trying to defend itself and all that sort of stuff, but it just kind of felt really weird. The way the game wraps it all up as well is also sort of odd. So this is heavy endgame spoilers here. So here's the gist of how it goes. All of a sudden, a new character comes in and they're like, "Oi, Simon, you scum, come over here, wrap this shit up, then fuck off, and never talk to me or my son ever again." That part of it sort of felt anticlimactic. There was no real payoff, I guess. It was sort of just done, and that was it. Now, credit where credit is due, I did think it was pretty cool how they slipped in a very important thing to defeating the WoW earlier in the game. I didn't see that as something that would come back as being that important. Maybe the answers were there and I just didn't fucking see that part, but I did think that was cool. One other thing I want to talk about that was also a bit of a negative for me was the lack of consequences to certain decisions. The game asks you to make life and death choices for other characters, but never really expands on that idea. At one point there's a scene where a lady's being kept alive by the WoW, but in a very vegetative state. In order to proceed, you must pull one of the plugs that's keeping her alive, but you're never required to pull both, and it's up to you whether you want to. On one hand, you're powering the safety features for the train you're about to board, but she dies. But you could also argue that death is the best case here, because she's obviously in pain. But then again, who are we to decide that? On the other, the safety features for the train are disabled, but she lives on in an even worse state than when you found her.
Are you okay? Are you okay?
I don't know. I want to go home.
I sort of see this one as a little bit nitpicky for myself because regardless of whether or not there are consequences for the decisions, they are still heavy decisions and they do still weigh on you. And that might also be the point. There aren't really any consequences you could have from this. It's just open-ended. I guess you live with that. There's one last thing I want to talk about in relation to Soma, and it's the way the characters are written and just the story as a whole. A lot of the characters are very well fleshed out and actually feel like real people. They actually feel believable. Sort of going back to my last point with the life and death decisions and also the character writing is a character you meet towards the end of the game. Sarah Lindwall, the last living human on Earth. Keeping herself alive on life support to make sure the WoW doesn't take over the Ark. You only spend a brief time with Sarah, but that brief time is spent getting to know her and compounding on her character. Once she trusts you enough, she relinquishes control of the Ark to you. Having fulfilled her final duties, she asks you to pull the plug on her life support. Again, this choice is totally optional. This is probably the most impactful decision you make through the whole game. It really, really punches you in the gut. The last living human, just gone. I did make the decision to pull the plug on Sarah, but it was not an easy decision. And I just found that crazy. A character I met 5 minutes before, and actually having a mental battle with myself about whether to pull the plug on her or not. Once you pull the plug, she then asks you to sit with her as she passes away.
Please just stay.
This has to be one of the most heart-wrenching 5 minutes of game I've ever played in my life.
Crazy thing this was. Life. At least I won't have to turn 30.
Next, I want to talk about a character who sort of works as your companion through the whole game. Kathryn.
Oh, that's better. Simon, was it?
Jared. Simon Jared.
Hi, Simon. I'm Kathryn. Have you figured out what's going on yet?
The chemistry between Kathryn and Simon through the whole game is really good and feels really human, which is kind of ironic considering the state Kathryn's in once you find her. Kathryn serves as a really good guide for the world of Soma, and also a good way for the devs to deliver exposition to the player. Simon's unfamiliar with the world he's in at the moment, but Kathryn serves as the bridge to that world. There are lengths of time where you go without conversation, but I was always eagerly awaiting the next conversation Kathryn and Simon would have. The chemistry between these characters was just gold. It really, really kept me engaged with the story. And that story, holy fuck. If this game doesn't have one of the most satisfying and bittersweet endings I've ever played, I don't know what does. This is one of those games that will stick with you after you finish it. And the question it asks is very, very interesting. What does it mean to be human? And is humanity beyond actual humanity worth saving? Humanity's dead, but lives on through the Ark.
I'm still here. I'm still here. Kathryn? Kathryn?
I'm here.
What the hell happened? What went wrong?
Nothing. They're out there, among the stars. We're here.
No. We were getting on the Ark. I saw it. It finished loading just before it launched.
Yeah, I saw.
Then why are we still here?
Simon, I can't keep telling you how it works. You won't listen. You know why we're here. You were copied onto the Ark. You just didn't carry over. You lost the coin toss. We both did. Just like Simon at Omicron, just like the man who died in Toronto 100 years ago.
This is bullshit. We came all this way. We launched the Ark.
I know it sucks, but our copies are up there. Kathryn and Simon are both safe on the Ark. Be happy for them.
Are you crazy? We're gonna die down here with those fuckers living at large on a spaceship. They're not us. They're not us.
I'm sorry you feel that way, Simon. I'm proud of what we did. We made sure that something of the hundreds of thousands of years of human history survives, that something lives on.
Oh, fuck this. Fuck this. Fuck you. Fuck you, Kathryn. You lied. And I believed in you. I trusted you. You said we're getting on the fucking Ark.
We are on the Ark, you idiot! I didn't lie. I can't be responsible for your goddamn ignorance. You
Fuck! Kathryn? Please don't leave me alone. Kathryn? Kathryn?
Simon and Kathryn are safe on that Ark, but Simon is stuck at the bottom of the ocean forever,
I believe we actually made it.
alone.
Well, we did.
I'm so relieved.
It's okay, Simon. Everything's all right now.